So welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to this unusual lunchtime lecture. We moved the lecture to 12 specifically because our guests are in Brussels and we didn't want them lecturing late in the evening. So thank you for coming to the lecture. This is the second of our architectural department lectures this fall. And we have with us ROTOR deconstruction and consultants. Many of you, or actually not many of you now looking at the faces, but some of you may be familiar with ROTOR from Oliver Wainwright's writing in The Guardian. He's the architectural critic, and he's been one of their champions just in kind of bringing out this issue, do we really need to demolish and destroy buildings, or is that building, which may be past its use, an essential material resource? ROTOR, which started in 2005 as an architecture collective, has slowly started to take stock of building the industry of salvage and deconstruction in the Brussels metropolitan area. They've done exhibitions, they've done a lot of stuff. They evolved from an architectural collective into a cooperative company that does deconstruction and salvage work in Brussels. They have an educational component, they do a bunch of stuff. And if you're interested, I would say go to The Guardian, look up Oliver Wainwright's writings on deconstruction, and you'll find ROTOR is really featured there. It's great to have them here via Zoom. I think we've had plenty of deconstructivist architects in the past, but these are our first deconstructors. And so we're going to welcome Margot Saulnier and Victor Meesters from ROTOR. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your invitation. So I'm Victor Meesters from ROTOR, and I'm working at ROTOR since 10 years. And I'm going to present one part of ROTOR, and Margot, which is with me in Brussels, because I'm actually in Paris, is going to talk after me about ROTOR deconstruction. Margot, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, maybe to explain a bit, like I mainly work in the reselling part of materials and the operation side. So what we're gonna explain you is like how our two structures and organizations work in complementarity, and to increase the practice of reuse in Brussels and in the northwest of Europe.
So this lecture is called the 99% You Will Understand Why. But first, a quick presentation of ROTOR. So we're a cooperative design practice founded in 2005 in Brussels. And we're about 30 people split in two organizations. One, ROTOR Deconstruction, which is the salvage company that Margot is gonna present, and the other is a non-profit organization, ROTOR, where we are doing design project, consultancy, exhibition, lecture like today, and research project. I'm gonna show you a few example of project dealing with the question of circularity and obsolescence in architecture. But first, I would like to go back in the past to introduce you the history of reuse. So during the antiquity, the word spolia was the word used for reuse. It comes from the Latin spolium, meaning peeling off the skin of an animal. So you can see on this image an old church in Rome, and if you look closely, you will see that they are made with different stones. And because they are coming from different places, spoiled, cities that were sacked. So at that time, the practice of reuse was also an expression of power. We found in the archaeology sites, like in Pompeii, some example of reuse in the history, like this counter was made with marbles that coming from the demolition site. We find also some advertising for selling second-hand roof tiles on this site, so proving that there was an existing market of reused building elements. If we come closer in the time, you can see in this image in Paris 1884, you're in front of the reclamation yard of Achille Picard, which is a demolition company well known at that time. And you can see the pediment of the Palais du Louvre that he reclaimed few years ago during La Commune de Paris, where the Parisian protest and burned the palace. This is an image took in 1928 in Brussels, a demolition site, in fact, that looks a bit of our demolition site with piles of materials well sorted. You can see wood and stones, but if you look closer on this facade, you will see like materials to sell here. So it proved that at that time, in 1928, it was still a common practice to sell on-site second-hand materials. And when we are thinking about demolition, we all have this image in our mind. That is a demolition of in Saint Louis, Missouri, Prut Igor, that you all know in architecture as famous for the end of modernism. And you understand that this practice of demolition makes impossible the reuse of building elements. The question is what happens between Achille Picard and this reclamation yard and this time where we are not able to collect salvage materials. So there is few reasons. The evolution of tools, of course. At the time of Achille Picard, we were using hand tools, and after two World War, we developed some machine that can go faster, but also the evolution of the wage, because reuse practice is 100% labor local workforces. And so with the evolution of the wage, the price of materials become lower than the price of people and make difficult to reclaim building elements. With the question of recycling, the practice of demolition evolved a bit. You're in front of the demolition site of a brutalist, a famous brutalist building in London, which is the Robin Hood Garden. And here it's the practice of demolition in the view of recycling the elements. So it's stripping out the interior of the building and then crushing the concrete to create a new raw materials. But we all know how disappointed could be the recycling practice with the great loss of energy and money embedded in this material. So like these are the crushed materials, but you can see like fragments of ceramic tiles or bricks or stones that could be sell at a higher price on the second-hand market. And every day we have like thousands of demolition every year in cities. This is an image of one of our students in London that try to visit every building in a year, that every permit of demolition in a year. And we found that less than 1% of the building elements are reused following their first application. So the question is about what about the 19%, 99% left? So to start this lecture, I have a small gymnastic exercise for you to interrogate our habits. It's an exercise that I steal from Denis Meadows when he came to Paris. So I will ask you, all of you, to put your hands on your legs. Voilà. Now you cross your hands like that. I hope you see me. Now you uncross your hands and try to cross in the other way, in reverse. What do you notice? Is it easy? Is it natural? Voilà, so I think you experiment what is it to change your habits, and the sensation you can have in your body could be the same sensation when you want to change your way of building element, of building architecture. So you can experiment how difficult is it to build with second-hand materials in a world made for new materials. So at Rotor, we try to cross the hands in two ways, and I'm going to show you like few projects that maybe make easier to change your habits. Um, so this first lesson is question the waste. We've been invited in Bruges for an exhibition, the Triennale of Bruges, and we wanted to reclaim this old floating deck. And when we hang and take out from the water, we found that there was like crabs under this deck. So we asked to the administration, what are these crabs? And they said that's a waste. You have in front of you a waste. It's an invasive species coming from China, and so they used to destroy these little animals because they have no place on this canal of Bruges. So we were interested by this waste, by these crabs, and we start to interrogate them and um, to look where they are born, where they are living, to compare the river of the Yangtze River, where they are coming from, to the canal and find some similarity, and make these small curiosity cabinets to interrogate the flow of these crabs and where they're coming from China. And we discovered that in China, it's a precious meal. They are cooked with famous chief, and they really like it. So we asked to Belgium cook, would you be able to cook these crabs, which is to cook this waste, in fact, because they are treated as waste. And so the project was to finally design a small restaurant on the beach and to invite some Belgian chef to cook the crabs that we collect on the shore. Voilà, so it's a delicious waste meal. Another small lesson is changing the perception of the existing instead of changing the materiality. If you can keep on site the materiality but change the perception of it, it's the first goal for circularity. So this is a project in Ghent, in Belgium. So the city wanted to transform this former industrial harbor to a public space, and the architect proposed to paint in white this new space. Um, and we are invited as artists to do a 1% artistic action on this project. So we tell to the architect before painting, can we have a look on the mark of this space? And we found that there was like a lot of mushrooms, proving that there was some marks of, because they are here because of the collecting some kind of materials. So we found interesting to keep some mushrooms that are here because of the past of use of this building. There was some graffitis works, and also like some nice textures because of the decoloration of the concrete, because we store at this place some cement. And so by protecting some piece of the history of this building, instead of creating only public space, we create an art gallery with less materials than expected. Transform uses. So another lessons that could be obvious, instead of throwing a material of a space, could you find a new way? We are in Paris, and the Galerie Lafayette, the famous shop that you maybe know, wanted to open an art foundation in this building. So they asked to the Rem Koolhaas, the famous OMA architect, to do this renovation works. But before this construction, they needed to close the building and to start some reflection about their project. So they asked us to do a scenography before closing the building, a scenography to host these lectures. And instead of doing scenography, we proposed them to open 4 years before the foundation with the same price for the scenography. So we had like this banal space, like classrooms. So we propose to raise a bit the ceiling to collect the natural light and have like workshop for artists. We cut the walls to have a big space to gather people, and we needed a space to eat together around the table. So there was this hanging ceiling that we dismantled and transformed to a dining hall. Another lesson from circularity is working on modularity and reversibility because it makes easier the way to reuse building elements. So that time we are in Ostend in Belgium, and this museum called Musée asked us to make the renovation of the space because we're a bit stuck in this obsolete set. So as you can see, like this wall where covering the natural light. So what we proposed was to cut this MDF wall and to create some modular exhibition set. And by doing so, to recreate an understanding of the space. So we did this model and to show them all the possibility you can do with this MDF. And we start to with the when we start to cut the wall. Voilà. So at the end, with no materials, with what they've got there, we create this set of for exhibitions. With scraps, it could be also obvious to use the leftovers of your production. And so with this project, we had a lot of MDF scraps. And by the same times, we had another art center who asked us to do the pavilion for the entrance of this art gallery, which is now in a church, in an old church. Um, so we were dismounting these MDF panels to create the scenography set for this museum. And we had like all these scraps and leftovers. But by reading again our classic design, it reminds us some classic architectures that could fit well in this church. So we collect all the scraps from this demolition deconstruction works and design this modest pavilion entrance shop. This is like 100% reuse pavilion. We didn't paint it. We just take the raw material, the raw leftovers. Another small lesson is make an inventory. So circular economy, as defined by Walter Style, which is a guy who think about circular economy, said that only managing stock. Circular economy is managing stock. So if you need to manage stock, you need to have a view on your stock. So making inventory is like really necessary works. So we used to do everyday inventory in building before working. So here it's a situation in Paris, a social housing company needed to ATM, and they wanted to transform to a social housing. So there was an international competition with 6 international architecture team, and we needed, as ROTOR, we needed to provide them with reuse elements. So we start to do a reclamation audit in the building. Um, Reclamation audit is not listing every material that you can dismantle. It's more, you need to take into account the phasing of the project, the pollution, the quantity of the material, the quality of the material, the wear, many options that can make possible or not the reuse of a building element. So you have in front of you one of our tools that we are using daily, this inventory, and like on the left part, you have the list of the materials like wooden floors, slates, or cast iron radiators. And this one are the most easy one to reuse because we know that there is some reuse activities existing and collecting these materials. And then a second batch of element where there is no reuse industry linked to these materials, like this wooden cupboard of the railings, but they are in good condition of uh, good quantities. And on the right parts, you can see like a regular sheet where you find the pictures of the room and like the details and where the quantity and where the. Sometimes you need study more the materials you want to reclaim, like this slate on the roof. Finally, were not were in bad condition because there was marks of rust on of this ironed part in the slate. And also doing the inventory need also to do some research on the archives, and we found the catalog of the these cast iron radiators make it possible to adapt these old radiators to the new boiler. Of course, you need also to repair. So this is another small lessons with all these materials on this former military base camp. We needed to clean them. So like this cupboard needed to be sand. So we try many way to sand by chemical processes or sanding or with a machine and adapt this old cupboard to the new furniture. The basins were washed and like pour in the vinegar bath and clean, and the lamp were relamped with LED new system rewire. But sometimes you don't have the use of this element and you need to find new use. So this is also a small lessons. You sometimes need to be creative, like for these panels of the toilets of the army. This is HPL, high pressure laminated panels. So they are in super resistance to a large number of chemical products and high temperature. So we decide to design a new stool and to send it to the CNC machine. So these panels make the new furnitures of this cafeteria. We discovered that we have like some cobblestones that we cut in two parts, so we can have like a part for the disabled person and one for the rain to collect. There was some railings, and we cut the rails to create some urban furnitures for the project. Another lessons in circularity is to cultivate your networks, because you need to have a view on what is already existing or freeing from the demolition of the city. So this is a project of a bookshop in Brussels, a bookshop that got every book in 13 language. It's close to the European Parliament. And he wanted to invest 100% of this money on local workforces and no new materials. So we proposed him to renovate the space this way. We create a white model because we don't know the materiality of the furnitures or that we're gonna collect. And then we start to look for materials. But by the same time, we opened a construction company in Brussels and start to calling building element from various places. Um, Voila. So it was quite easy to renovate this space with second-hand materials, and you even not notice that they are not new. But there was a tricky part, like this opening that we did, and we needed a wallpaper um, to cover this space. And we didn't find a second-hand wallpaper, so we were like selecting the new ones. But one night, one of our colleagues, which is friends of the scenograph of the theater La Monnaie in Brussels, and he spent a bit of time with them, and they tell us that they stock in containers a lot of theater sets that are no use. So we asked them if we can borrow one of them, and they accept to come and to install the best wallpaper secondhand that you can ever have. And the last small lessons is doing the state of the art of the existing practice, of course, because as ROTOR, we are able to reuse on site a lot of materials to design and build a project. But what about other architects? Is there any existing reuse company? So we start to look on the countryside where the land is cheap. And we found some reclamation yards, reuse dealers, antiquity dealers. Voilà, every part of Europe got their own reuse dealer. It's not the green revolution 2.0 that you could expect. It's more like this company that don't talk about reuse, but more about authenticity, celebrating the patina of the materials. But in fact, they are able to collect and sell second-hand wooden board for a new construction like this one, which is designed by 6A architect in London. And we found some brick reseller able to collect and clean the bricks and to sell you bricks for second-hand houses, or this antique dealer that was able to collect second-hand windows for a big institution in Brussels. And we discover by doing this state of the art that we have the first catalog of second-hand materials available in Northwest Europe. So we decided to do an online directory to give this information to every architect in Europe, and some example of project, and develop all the tools, the specifications, the guidance for manuals for to help designer to implement or extract second-hand elements in project. So you can find this directory on opalis.eu for Northwestern Europe, and SalvoWeb for UK. So now I let Margot continuing the presentation. So Margot, please tell me when I have to switch for the next slide.
Yes, thank you, Victor. So from that research of professional dealers, it appears, as Victor said a few seconds before, that many of the resellers were based in the countryside, where the fields are quite cheap, and also they were mainly focused on traditional materials. Mainly because it's easier to dismantle, the economical value is quite high, and also there is a real issue of historical preservation in Europe for those materials. So when we understood this context, we wanted to understand if it was possible to have a similar business model, but in a quite dense urban area, and with modern materials. So we started to experiment the logistic applied on contemporary building elements. And one of the very first projects where we got involved was to dismantle this modern building in the city center of Brussels. It was previously the headquarters of the BNP Bank. And this building was kind of the symbol of an urban planning quite rejected by the Brussels inhabitants. It's called Brusselsization, and it was no value for citizens and for politics to keep it and to preserve this architecture in the city. So the demolition permit was quite easy to get. for the owners of the field, and they didn't really had to care about the future of the materiality of the architect. So first of all, in 2014, ROTOR had to really get the foot in the door to be allowed to enter in the building and dismantle as much materials as possible. So we started to focus on the finishing materials, because this is where it's like that's the layout, the layer the easiest to get in a way. And as you can see on the photos, it was mainly like really simple tools and a labor work. So things didn't really change since the last century. The thing is, like, we understood those materials was super qualitative, and it was interesting to preserve them as much as possible. So you can go at the other to the other slide, sorry. And so we palletized every materials depending on their specificities. But from that, we had to organize their transport and their storage. So for us, if you go to the next slide, the real challenge started after the dismantling. So we were in front of a large amount of materials. But what's next? What was the next step? How to be able to reintegrate them in the contemporary projects? So in 2016, ROTOR DC has been founded as a spin-off of ROTOR ASBL, the non-profit organizations, and the goal was not only to find issues, find new projects for the dismantled building elements, but it was also to show and convince that it was possible to have a real business model, an economical balance, thanks to the selling of these materials. Because if you start to show up that it's possible to have an economical model where you can do benefits and where you create local work and local jobs, it's mean that those materials has value, and like you can continue to develop the practice of reuse also by using super powerful like political and economical tools. Now we are after 3 movings, we are still in Brussels capital, near the NATO headquarters in Brussels. And as you can see all around us, like you can see some parks and so on, but like we are really nearby the city and still within the city actually. So we want to be as close as possible from the deconstruction sites and also from the new projects going on and built by the architect. Here it's our actually current warehouse, and just for the small story, like it was previously an office building, so we have to adapt it to our activities. And as you're gonna understand later, we have a showroom and we sell and store the reclaimed building elements in this place. So we basically centralize all of our activities in the same place, because when you talk about reuse, you talk about logistic, you talk about material flow, and so like you talk about physical stock. So maybe to give you a bit more like a larger image about what we are selling, here is a panel of the products we are used to have in our stock. And as you can see, we have like a large variety of products, starting from the small coat hook to the brick, and you can also find in our place like lightings, ceramic tiles, or parquet floors. So to be able to treat and reclaim all those materials, we are now a team of 20 people working like 6 days on 7 in our place, and we are divided in 3 teams, and each team is super important for to be able to provide to our customer like materials ready to be reused, ready to be installed and used again. So the first one, sorry, the slides are in French, but is what we call the acquisition team. So this is actually the team in charge of the organization of the dismantling of materials. As you can see, we always adapt our operation to the place, because every context is singular, and that's why we need a lot of workers, because most of the time we cannot bring a huge machine in places about to be rehabilitated or demolished. So from that side, on site, we also try to palletize and make the operation as easy as possible to be transported until our warehouse. So if you go to the next slide, Victor, we can see that on site, when the materials arrive, they're going to be treated, they're going to be processed in order to be as close as possible as a new material. So here you can see the process for the ceramic tiles. And so first of all, the tiles are dismantled on site. They are packed in blue boxes, and from that part, when they arrived in our warehouse, there is three possibilities to clean them and rehabilitate them. The first one is to remove the mortar manually with a pneumatic tool, but it's super hard, super physical, and super long. The second one is dedicated to the ceramic tiles. So we gonna dissolve the mortar in chemical baths, and then we're gonna clean the rest of it thanks to a high water jet pressure. High pressure water jets, but this process is super. It's impossible to use for cement tiles. So basically, we also developed a new machine able to remove in a mechanical process the mortar from the tile. Like that. We can also now process cement tiles and terracotta tiles as well. So the idea is for ROTOR DC is always to improve and go further in the reconditioning of the materials. We do not sell a materials as it was dismantled. I mean, by this, we always want to make as easy as possible the reinstallation of the materials. And for that, we also developed a whole reconditioning process for the lightings. So that we can propose a whole service of recabling in order to have material lightings which answer to the European standards. For us, it's a way to show that reuse can also provide like super qualitative service as far as new materials. So we need to show up that the second-hand materials can challenge the new materials. So from that, once the materials are reconditioned, they're gonna be stored in our warehouse, and this part of our activity is one of the key, because we need to care that the material will not be scratched or destroyed or during that part of the company. So maybe Victor, you can go to the next slide. Here is just a few photos to show up that dealing with second-hand materials is also dealing with a large variety of elements. So our team is always looking for the best way to store the elements in our premises. But if you do all of those process, and if you store the elements, you still don't show up its characteristics to the architects or to the builders. So then we have decided to have a web shop, and on it we will describe and show up the characteristics of each materials. It means that you can see in real time the quantities available, and also and also the different conditions of each material. So here it's also a real challenge, because we have to explain how easy or how possible it is to reinstall them, and like that the architects can easily like propose the materials thanks to only a research on our website. It's also a way for us to follow up like each product. And the last team is specialized in the selling of the materials. It means they have to give like a kind of a new narrative, and to challenge the imagination of the customers, because like if you have a super 80s ceramic tiles, sometimes this is not super fashion, but it's still a material interesting. So our job is also to give you a new narrative, to show up the characteristic of each element, in order to give all the keys to reuse it and install it in a new project. So basically, here was a small image of our showroom, and here is the some projects which reused terrazzo tiles, which was previously outdoor facades of collective houses. So as you can see, this is a way different use, and those images are shared by our customers and by the architects. And reuse, our practice is a way also to make stronger the talk and the interactions between the builder, the designer, the owner, and also the material trader. And I think nowadays it's specifically important to keep this human relationship in the architecture. Each person is important in the chain and in the network. So if you go to the next slide, thank you. Like I would like us to show you design with sense. This is a really close partner, and they are used to integrate our salvaged building elements. And what is really interesting is that these woodworkers also challenging. They challenge us in order to propose them significant quantities in order to create some stable categories of materials. Like for instance, here you can see some wooden panel reused as kitchen, and for us it's always a pleasure to talk with them and to looking for materials for them. So like we are an articulation between the offer of materials available because of demolition and rehabilitation projects, and professionals who design and rehabilitate places. And it's allow us to the last point, maybe one of the most important when we talk about how to design with salvaged building elements. Maybe one of the most important thing is to design with flexibilities. It's to stay calm and open-minded, even though you don't know what the characteristic of the materials you're going to use at the end of your project. So we would like to share with you the project of the Zineco project. It's basically a building which had to be rehabilitated, and it welcomed a non-profit organization who deals with who builds some machines for a huge parade in the city of Brussels, and they are also teach to people how to work with to steel and metal. So here we had to design a facade, and the first thing we wanted to looking for is the materials itself. So we went to resellers and asked them the windows they had in stock, and we started to have like an inventory about the windows available on the market. And from that document, we also started to design, to draw like a pattern of a facade with the minimum dimensions of each opening and the maximum dimension of that opening on the facade. So it means that we didn't really know which window we're going to use, but we would know more or less the how big it could be on the facade. And those windows will have to check and to validate some characteristics. So for instance, the efficiency of the energy of the thermic for those windows was super important, and as far as the homogeneity of the batch for all the openings was also a big issue. But finally, the architects and ROTOR was quite flexible, and the owner, were quite flexible on the colors of each openings. So like the idea was really to make how can I say, to show up the most important characteristic and which one were manageable and which were quite how can I say, easy to be changed depending of the windows available on the market. So here it's different propositions for this facade, and the architects had only to make a small a decision with the owners. So at the end, the facade looks like that, and as we can see, the windows found on that time in the reseller, and the dealers also show up and improve in a way the design and the aesthetic of the facade. It was a luckily hazard, that coincidence, that at that time the windows with a rounded with a rounded finishing was on the market, and they just decided to reverse it in order to give a new sense to that characteristic, which was mainly to deal with like a structural needs in a former project. So maybe that's the idea we need to keep in mind, that we need to change our habits, but it can be super positive for the aesthetic and also for the environmental impacts of the architecture nowadays.
Thank you.
Questions, anyone? Go ahead, yes.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Yeah.
Merci pour cette présentation, c'est super. Je continue en anglais pour mes collègues. I think this is really amazing. I just had a question an example came to mind, which is La Tour Montparnasse in Paris. They won the project that won the competition. They won it because a collaborative proposed that they reuse the windows to kind of make furniture with it. And that, I think, what's kind of amazing with this type of project is that Europe is really pushing for these type of projects. But my question was related to in this building also, you also had materials that needed to be taken away because of like the harmful because they were off-gassing or they were not good for your health. And I'm just wondering how much of that you're taking into account. The PVC is not healthy for the environment. It's like off-gassing. Other like materials are like really not good. So how do you actually take that into account? Is there something that you're taking into account? I know that it's recovered as a material, but not all materials are good for your health. And not in the new buildings, especially in the US, for example, they're just plastic buildings. They're just like not good materials. So what do you do when you don't have enough of this old good types of buildings that provides you with materials?
Yeah, I can answer if you want, Margot. So you're talking about pollution and quality of materials. Yeah, it's a disaster that we have like so poor materials nowadays. That's a fact. About pollution, sometimes the quality of the materials are better in times. For instance, all the glue and let's say the pollution from the glue disappeared after a few years. So if you take an old carpet tiles, the carpet tile is more healthier than at the beginning because of the time and the evaporation of this. So the time could give more value or more characteristics, more features to one materials, and same thing for old materials because the wood make are stronger or patina. But of course, it's a world full of pollution. So lead, asbest also are like one of the first check to do on site. We can treat some element. For instance, the cast iron radiators paint with lead painting. They are we put them in a basin in a chemical product, so it removes the painting. But reuse practice are 100% workforce. So it means that every step that you add is more money that you add on the top of this. It's more costs that you add on top of the processing of the materials. So the question is, do you have a market that could be okay to buy a material that is renovate? So you cannot buy every materials. The quality of materials also, of course, the old materials are sometimes better. The question of the glue or the fixation of the materials, the joinery, like for instance, the bricks, the old bricks are stronger than the new one because um, we lower the temperature of cooking of brick and add cement to make them stronger. But the old bricks were made with this mortar that is more soft that you can remove easily. Um, but the question, so there is a question of pollution, there is a question of quality, and most of time A category elements go to a B category because it's used. So we are doing this like finding a third place or like a lower requirements for the new materials. So like the lamping for the lamps or the stones, etc. Sometimes you can upcycle them, give them a better use, like this HPL panel transformed to furniture. This tool, it's a valuation, you hide the valuation of the materials. Um, but my main preoccupation behind your question, like the Tour Montparnasse, like a tower, is about the scale of circular economy. What is the scale of circular economy? Because we are all we are practicing reuse and circular economy, but everybody is talking about massification of this practice and in a sense of thinking with industrial mind and we need to build all this quantity of building and we need to create new materials. So can the circular economy can provide these new materials, but I think it's different system, different process. So the practice of reuse is more close to mushroom collection in the forest than the open mine, because you have like a batch of 50 square meters of ceramic tiles, pink, and then 2 months after you have 70 square meters of red ceramic tiles, different dimensions, and you have to deal with this. So it's like small rivers making big rivers, if you want. But the size of the buildings you're talking about, I think the first things to do is to keep on side a maximum of things, because circular economy can't afford to provide like replace every concrete blocks by wood and you have no forest. Voilà. So that's my answer.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
maybe I just would like to add something else as well, because like when you talk about the qualitative build elements, sometimes we also like what we can also observe is for that for certain materials they were not really interesting and qualitative like described as qualitative a few years before, and like nowadays people are interesting to find them as second hands. I take a really simple example. It's the HPL panels. When we started to sell second-hand materials in ROTOR DC, for us it was impossible to propose them in as second hands, because it was super it was quite expensive due to the labor work spent to dismantle them and transport, and the cost of the transport to bring them until our warehouse. But nowadays we are currently proposing like trespass panels, and our customers and the designers who follows our activities are more and more interested by this material. So sometimes the question of the quality depends also about how people are ready or not to accept them in their new design, and to pay the cost of the local work. And even though it's not like perfect, and there is previous traces of use on it.
Frank, go ahead.
Thanks for the lecture. This is Frank Jacobus. That was a great lecture. I love the work that you all are doing. I have two quick questions, or I think they're quick questions. One is, generally speaking, is the cost of secondhand equal to, lesser than, or more than, general building material? I know that's a tough question because it depends on quality of building material that you're buying, if you're buying new, etc. But just, I'd like to hear some thoughts on that. The second question is, I was thinking through a design process, which takes time, months and months of a design process. And so if I were using your services as part of a design process, I can imagine saying, what do you guys have? What are the materials coming to your site or going to the website? But then the materials, because they're so unique in their sizing, those materials could be sold by the time my design process is over. So I might find things that I like. So do you have a system where you kind of earmark and store, or is it like, hey, this is going to be a general thing, but if you come back, it may be a slightly different size? Or how do you handle things like that with the kind of materials that are very unique in their sizing?
Margot, which one do you want to answer?
Yeah, totally. I think like for the first question about the cost, like we have a guideline in ROTOR this year, which is quite clear, and we want to be as transparent as possible. So like, as we are a worker cooperative and we only earn our salary based on the sales of the materials, when the economical value to when we sell them is smaller than is cheaper than the cost of the dismantling, the transport, and all the process to reclaim it. We also ask sometimes to the owners who demolished the building to pay for that, because we also want to show up that there is a cost, there is an economic cost also to keep these materials, and that's they are in charge because they decide to demolish or to throw away the materials. So like sometimes, like basically our economic is a question of balance, and for every situation we try to have the fairest one between the price of the materials and the cost of its salvation. So maybe that's the first point. And for the question and the issue of the time requested between the moment we have the stock of the materials and the moment where the construction site will need it, this is a super interesting question, and we continue to work on it. But maybe one of the key is to this flexibility we were talking about, because like to ask for like red tiles 10 by 10 per 10 centimeters and for an area of 500 square meters, like it's impossible for us to answer. But if you say like we would like tags between 10 to 10 centimeters and 20 to 20 centimeters, and they can be red or brown, and we can have two different batch to lay 500 square meters, it's a huge difference for us. So what we asked to our to the architects who wants to work with us, it's to give us the possibilities to propose them as a solution, and for that their question has to be a bit more open than usual. And the second thing is like when they found something available in our stock, but the building is in like they gonna need it like within the next few months, the first question is like, are you able to stock them by yourself on site? And do you need a service of storage? And like this is also something we propose, but of course it has a cost. So like we always try to find the most manageable solution. And for some categories of materials as well, we are able to say that we can ensure that we're going to have the materials within the next few months, even though this is not the ones which are currently in our stock. Like I take an example, we reuse like glue lamp beams, and we just cut them in the thickness, and for this pan, and it's created glue lamp panels. It's super nice. Architects love it, and we are able to confirm that we have them in stock nowadays, but we're gonna also have this material within 10 months or within 2 years, because like this is this category of materials, we want to stabilize the trading. And that's the same for the brick resellers. Sometimes you can ask them for any kind of bricks, and they're gonna have them in big quantities, even though it's for a month or for the next year.
So maybe
Margot, Victor, it breaks my heart to ask this, but we have to turn them over to our friends like now. So I have to ask to wrap up. Thank you again for this amazing presentation, and I do hope that the discussion will continue between the audience and you.
thanks a lot for the invitation, and we hope that we have the chance once to come to your university and meet you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
And if you want to know more about our work, on the website opalis.eu, we have like several manuals that we wrote with public funding, European public fundings, and with answering all the questions about how to extract building elements, how to specify procurement strategies, reuse dealers. Every topics around reuse are covered by our research on opalis.eu. Voilà.
Merci.